Welcome to Vashon Center for the Arts. I'm Allison Halstead-Reed, Executive Director. It's great to see you all tonight. Tonight, we welcome to our stage Patrisse Cullors, one of our nation's most powerful voices for change. It is an honor and a joy to have Patrisse in residency with us this past week. Seeing her workshop with island students and sharing her stories with teachers and staff in the schools has shown her remarkable gifts as an educator. She is also a creator and artist. Before the night is over, you'll hear more about her installation on our campus. Joining Patrisse tonight is another powerful voice for change, Nikkita Oliver. Nikkita is a Seattle community organizer, activist, educator, and creator. I couldn't imagine a more perfect pairing for a moderated conversation. Together, they share a goal and a vision for a world where harm and oppression are replaced by care and compassion. I want to thank partners in education, Vashon Island School District, Seyfarth Shaw, Vashon Thriftway, the Alan M. Painter Grant Program, Janie and Kirk Starr, Jim Bruya and Robin Weber, Kevin and Jenny McMurdo, Natalie Abel and Nat Anderson, and Joe and Ronley for supporting Patrisse's residency on Vashon, and Shakoi and Ren for connecting VCA with Patrisse. Tonight's event is being live streamed, and our ASL interpreters are Suzanne Greenberg and Tammy Burke. But before we bring Patrisse and Nikkita out on the stage, I'd like to introduce you to another powerful voice, an emerging voice within our own island community, Malaya Dickerson. Malaya has graced our stage before as a young spoken word poet. She participated in our MLK celebrations in both 2019 and 2020. Today, she is a junior at Vashon High School, where she is a member of the Racial Equity Pact Group. She is working towards a future as a doctor focused on women's health. But tonight, she is here to share her talent as a spoken word poet and her passion for social justice. Please welcome Malaya.
All eyes on me, all eyes on me. We've been failed by a fixed system. Me, you, my brother, my father, my aunt, my grandma, Philando, George, Sandra. Being put down just to bring others up, as I'm tired of being stepped on, crying and sinking deeper and deeper and deeper, but not too deep, because one has no right in white America to feel vulnerable. All eyes on me. Sitting in a self-proclaimed penitentiary, being shackled by emotional trauma, sitting in a state of distorted self-image, neck to neck in accusations that should be protected by proclamations. So deep in self-enslavement that the self-induced death penalty is the only option sitting in front of me, but not wanting to have the same fate to fame as Michael or Rakia, but wanting to be praised like Katanji and Miss Gorman. Oh, but it doesn't matter what I want, it's what they give to me. All eyes on me. All I see to represent black boy joy and black girl pride are rappers, athletes, and comedians. Where are the doctors, lawyers, and lawmakers? All eyes on me. Middle child role models slowly piled up in responsibilities. Only celebrated after your self-image is obliterated. They start yelling, all lives matter, blue lives matter, don't we matter too? That's the sound of the protest to our protest. All eyes on me. I repeat in my head, what is abolition? What is abolition? What is abolition? Abolition is taking away white power in a white system. Abolition is having equity to reach equality. But truly, equality isn't what we strive for, because aren't we still under the white man's control? Was slavery really abolished? In the last 30 years, we've learned that we can take care of ourselves better than law enforcement can. Worried about your life and career, so you take ours. Man, I can't breathe. How does one take a gun out instead of a taser? There are two different colors, just like you and me. We're blessed we're still breathing and not bleeding. All eyes on me. Thank you. I would now like to welcome the lovely ladies, Nikkita Oliver and Miss Cullors, out on stage.
Well, good evening, Vashon. It is a pleasure to see all of your faces in this strange pandemic world we live in. I can see half your faces. Make sure you smize, okay? Let me know you're here. I am so excited and honored to share space with such a courageous human being. And with all eyes on me in mind, I do want to say, I hope that we all came in this space today to protect Black women. I'm going to take that as an agreement of our community values today. My name is Nikkita Oliver. I use they, them pronouns. Yes. You know, Patrisse, I want to start with a question I love to ask everyone. You know, we all have our bios, what gets put on the website or in the pamphlet and what they read on the stage. But what most interests me about most people is how would you introduce yourself if you didn't have to worry about what to write in a bio?
I love that. And excuse me for taking my cough drop out my mouth like that. Hi, Nikkita.
Hello.
It's really good to be with you.
You as well. I couldn't be more stoked. I was like, I don't like to get on a ferry, but anything for Patrisse. There's certain people that are in the world that I feel like deeply connected to, and you are one of those people. And I see you, and I'm really grateful for your work and what you do for us and how you do it for us. So I just want to name that on this stage. You about to try to make me cry. I like to do that, especially when I know the person on the stage, because I don't want to take for granted these moments. And in this strange pandemic world, and I feel like especially after the uprisings and with all of the attacks and criticisms that I face, I don't take for granted my life. So thus I don't take for granted your life. So I just want to ground us in that. And how I would describe myself, first and foremost, I'm a mom. It's really cool. I still feel like every day, I don't know, for the parents out there, if it stays strange forever having a child. Like, I am responsible for you. But yes, I'm a mom, and I don't get to talk about that a lot or share that a lot publicly for safety reasons. So when I get to describe myself, I let people know, like, I take my parenting very seriously and very joyfully. I'm also an abolitionist, and thank you. And I like to call myself an abolitionist evangelist. I deeply believe that the work of abolition is going to set us free, not just physically, economically, but also spiritually. And I'm like I would also describe myself as like a person who loves community and like in deep community. I don't do the work that I do solely for I don't see victories as just getting rid of systems or changing them. I actually see the victory in how we do it together and how we show up for each other. And so how I value community is really important, and thus how I'm accountable to community is really important for me, which is a lot of the reason why I wrote this book. So that's how I would describe myself, and I really loved you asking me that. Thank you.
Yes. And you know what I love about all the things you just shared? You know, you grounded it in this relationship, but mom, abolitionist, say that 10 times fast. Abolitionist, evangelist, community, deeply in community, everything was centered around relationship. And I feel like that is such an important part of the work that we do. I think people hear the word abolition and they automatically think mostly about dismantling systems and maybe a little bit about building the world we want to live in, but often miss the importance that all of that has to be grounded in our care and relationships for each other.
That's right.
And seeing that as a part of our big human family.
That's right.
And when I read your book, I was constantly drawn back to my own relationships and my own family. And it opened the door for me to share my own story about watching my father be deeply impacted by a system that did not care about our family or our relationships, but pretended like it did. In fact, said because he couldn't afford to pay child support, they would put him in jail on a cycle over and over again. That was the law in Indiana. The prosecutor had that discretion.
Yep.
And it broke our relationship.
That's right.
And so when I think about abolition, I actually think about the healing and repairing of relationships.
Yes.
You start your book by talking about courageous conversations, and you started by talking about courageous conversations with your mom, which is interesting that you also just started by saying, I'm a mom. I would love to know, when you wrote the book, what brought you to telling that story? It felt so personal. I was like, if my mom read a book that I wrote, and I was like, this is the conversation I had with my mom, she would have some stuff to say to me later.
She did.
She did.
She did. I took some stuff out of the book because she was like, please don't put that in the book. And I was like, fine.
Can you tell us about courageous conversations?
Sure, yeah. So, you know, I was that child who I was always telling our business. And, you know, my mom, in fact, when I was a kid, she would say to me before we left the house, she'd be like, okay, we're about to go to someone's house. And what you're not going to say, because I didn't have a filter. Most children don't, right? But I definitely didn't. I was like, I thought people should know what happened, you know? And she was like, no, for protection purposes, you don't do that, you know, around white folks. There's certain things you don't say. There's certain things you don't do. And so I really learned how to like stifle things and repress things. And that's not a judgment of her. She was protecting us. She was protecting us in a system that didn't love her as a Black mother and definitely didn't love her children. And as I grew older and as I became politicized and kept developing my art, I realized like that need for transparency and that need to have conversations and step into them in a courageous way felt like a big gap in my world. And, you know, I really see the concept of courageous conversations being the kinds of conversations you have with the people that you love the most. So I'm not asking people to have a courageous conversation with a troll. This is not a...
That's impossible.
Yeah.
Okay? It was just courageous that I let you on my social media in the first place.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I'm not asking you to, you know, reach across the aisle, right? That's not the intention of a courageous conversation. Courageous conversation is about strengthening the communities that we're in. And, you know, I've had many, many courageous conversations, but I also feel like the courageous conversation that many of us have with our governments, right? The courageous conversation of saying, no, we are not going to allow you to do this any longer. And these are the needs that we have as a community. So I feel like the courageous conversation concept is both an interpersonal one, but it's also a collective one. And I feel like for me, it's the foundation of how we practice abolition. And I feel like, you know, we have witnessed a courageous conversation in this country for hundreds of years, often led by Black people, often led by Black women, around how we transform this place and how we heal this place. And inside of that, for me, the goal is how we heal as a collective body. And I think the practice of courageous conversations can at first be really uncomfortable, a lot of discomfort.
I'm discomfort avoidant, so
That's exactly
you know
right.
what I'm saying.
You know, but in the practice and doing it, especially as if you're practicing it with intention, there's a lot of freedom in the courageous conversations. There's a lot of freedom in it. Before I got here, had a courageous conversation with a mentee of mine who was upset with me. And I wanted to talk to her directly and remind her she can always come to me and let me know that. And we processed, and, she realized that part of her upset was with me, but also part of her upset was with what's going on in the world right now. And it's easier to lay it on me. And so we had that process as well. And it was a really beautiful moment, I think, for the both of us.
One of the things I noticed about courageous conversations for myself personally, it's not necessarily entering into it that is hard. It's actually moving forward from it to the next step.
That's right.
That is the most challenging, because I don't necessarily have a problem voicing hurt. I'm not always sure how we move from hurt to healing, and I'm not going to say healed, because I think healing is a process we may move through multiple times over and over again, because I think sometimes you start to heal and then you realize, oh wait, this also hurt. How do you, what does it look like to be able to move in a way that's not necessarily linear, but also does not stay in the hurt? Because part of courageous conversations, in my opinion, is also the courage to be willing to enter into the healing.
Yes. Ooh.
Sorry, I had to ask you the hard questions.
No, it's good. It's a good, hard question. It really, I think a lot of, I don't remember what chapter it is, or what step it is. I don't remember the actual chapter, but I remember the step, and that's forgive actively, not passively, which is one of the steps in the book. And that was the hardest chapter for me, the forgiving actively, not passively, because in many ways, the way we're taught to lean into forgiveness is prematurely, and I don't think that that's the work of forgiveness. I think forgiveness is active. You have to dig into why you're choosing to forgive. What does forgiveness provide you, not just the other person? And I think there's courage in that as well. I also think in the possibilities of courageous conversations really comes with like the people you're doing the work with. And so first thing that I asked, my mentee was, what do you need from me? I was just like, I am sorry, and what do you need from me? And because sometimes it's not always a sorry that someone wants, and sometimes people don't know what they want. Sometimes I don't know what I want. I just know that I'm hurt, and I want you to listen to it
and
for a little
sometimes
bit.
I'm sorry is what I say, so the other person don't keep talking.
That's exactly.
I'm gonna just be real with y'all.
That is the truth. That is the truth. And so I think there needs to be a willingness to want to be accountable and to feel accountable. And inside of that accountability, knowing that it's going to be a process. Because for me, accountability, and when we talk about accountability, especially in RJ, restorative justice, and TJ, transformative justice, accountability is changing your practice as well. It's not just about the apology, it's about what you're changing on the other side of that. And I think that is the place where we get stuck in this country, right? First, it took a long time for folks to apologize. And then all people wanted to do was, I said sorry. What do you all want? I'm like, reparations, duh. So I think that there's on the other side of an apology is a changed practice. And how do we change our practice? That's really difficult because we actually and literally do not have good modeling of how to change, how to be different on the other side.
Nor is it even okay sometimes to change. I've ran for office twice. And to be quite frank, to tell people, especially as like an elected or even someone trying to become an elected, I've changed my mind because I got new information and I was
Yes.
wrong, and now I need to pivot to do what is right.
Yes.
It's almost as if the moment you admit that, they're like, you're not qualified.
You're betrayed, yes. It's like a betrayal.
It is like a betrayal.
And I think that is unfortunate. It's very anti-indigenous because in many of our indigenous practices, it is about evolution. We have to evolve. That's how we can exist.
You have to grow.
You have to grow, literally. And, you know, it's, I think there's also like deep beauty in growth and a lot of like pain and agony and grief in growth. I think I was talking to a sister the other day who called me, given everything that I'm going through right now, and she just called to listen to me. And she also called to like give me a good sermon, and I needed it. And at the end of the sermon, she prayed for me, and she said, you're gonna have to grieve parts of you that just, they don't exist to the world anymore. You're gonna have to grieve those parts. And I was like, I don't want to. That's still me. And she's like, yeah, but the projection of you, you're gonna have to grieve that. And that was both painful but freeing. And I think that's the messiness of the work that we're doing. We don't like messiness, we're taught like, nope, don't touch that. But that's who we are as human beings. And if we accept that and actually give ourselves the room and space for that mess to evolve, there's so much there, so much possibility there.
Because you can't do no cleaning if you won't recognize the house is dirty.
That's a word. Who's making the shirts? Who's making the shirts?
'Cause sometimes I put the dishes in the sink and then just don't go in the kitchen. You tell a story in the book. I know y'all laughing because you're like, I got dishes in the sink at home. That was an uncomfortable laugh. I got dishes in the sink at home too. May or may not do them. You tell a story in the book. It really stuck with me. You talk about being in a meeting with your team, and I think someone says something to you about something you could have done differently maybe, and you reacted instead of responding.
Yes.
And you talk about how you own that later, and then talk about the importance of learning the difference between a reaction and a response. I think that is something we can all learn from. How do you even learn to start to identify those things? And given what you just shared, and in your experience also as a leader, how do we create space for folks to be able to learn the difference that is actually restorative and transformative and not punitive? Because I feel like the world we live in is so quick, if you even admit you messed up, to be like, get out your seat.
Yep.
And not create any space for the humanity of evolving and growth. How do we create space for each of us to learn the difference between reaction and response? And if you would just share a little about why you even made that distinction in the book.
Yes. Well, I wrote this chapter because I'm very concerned about the state of our movement. That's just flat out. I'm concerned about the guttural reaction response that we have towards each other. The lack of care, the lack of compassion, and often cruelty that I see us, how we respond to each other. And that experience was so embarrassing. I was like, really, Patrisse? Because I definitely was deeply reactive. Cried, ran out the room, was so dramatic. And then I remember sitting outside the room and being like, Patrisse Cullors, like that really could have happened very differently. And so
You make me want to ask you, what's your sign though?
Gemini.
I love me a Gemini.
I'm a Gemini. And I sat out, I remember sitting outside. I sat outside for a long time because I was embarrassed too. I was like, I was like 100 people in that room that I just popped off in front of. And I was like, how am I gonna go back there? Like, what am I gonna say to this person? And I didn't apologize immediately. I was too ashamed, But I was like, I actually can't continue in our relationship if I do not show up for how I behaved. Like I can't, in my body, I just couldn't go any further. And you know, me and that comrade of I had a long process around what happened, because it wasn't about her really. It was really about my leadership and actually really being burnt out and being at the like end of my rope and feeling a lack of support and all these things. And so I think part of the wanting to differentiate is actually, it's a deep calling in to us. I'm actually calling us in to look at our behavior and to investigate it and to start talking about it more openly, start having more courageous conversations about how we're showing up with each other, because I believe that our movement is at the vanguard of many things, not just politics, but we're also on the vanguard of healing justice.
Yes.
Transformative justice. We're at the vanguard of abolition, how we practice it. And so how we do it with each other actually matters, not just for ourselves, but everybody else witnessing and watching.
Yes.
And so the response versus react chapter was really a conversation for myself. I can't tell you how many times this last year that I've picked up my own book to reread and remind myself. I just had to do it 2 days ago.
That means you wrote something good.
Literally had to do it yesterday morning, because I swear I wanted to react. Like, I really want, and I had to sit with myself. I had to call people. I had to cry, and I had to be like, I know there's another way here, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the other way, because the way we're doing it right now is not only is it not sustainable, it's not going to last. Our movements are not going to last.
You know, I just want to, how we do it with each other actually matters. I think about that a lot. Audience, how many of y'all consider yourself committed to restorative justice? I love to see it. What I see sometimes, even in our movements for abolition, is nearly a punitive reaction. The deeply ingrained, we are all fish in this water, and when things happen, we do react, and we don't react with restorative justice. We react with punishment towards each other. If you could impart some wisdom around what we could do, I hate to use the word differently. I almost think better is the word I always want to lean towards. What can we do better? What does it look like to respond to each other in moments of crisis, or in moments where we have questions or concerns or doubts, that does not fall back into the punitive systems that we're actually aiming to dismantle, but actually leads us into the ones we're hoping to build?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. In the last, I think, decade of this movement, I've always been really perplexed at the use of social media to deal with conflicts inside our movement. Like, deeply perplexed. Like, wait, why'd you put that on Twitter? Like, you could have just
got my
called me.
number?
Exactly.
Call
you
me.
could have just called me. Like, that's an interesting subtweet / like just really literally adding me. I don't understand. And I started to realize that some of us are really practiced in turn up culture. Like, I'm just going straight to online. Like, that's how I'm gonna get it's like the diary, right? And not really understanding the consequences. And I feel like part of the work that we have to model is picking up the phone, requesting a meeting, even if we feel like the thing that happened was like so not okay. Like, can we show up for each other better?
Yeah.
To sit with each other, to create a circle, to have a talking piece, to ground ourselves in what may be coming up. Because I I really believe in us.
That's beautiful.
I do. I really believe in our capacity to be better. And that's because I come from places where that's all I had was the belief in each other. I grew up in poverty. I grew up around a lot of police violence, and at the end of the day, like, I always talk to people, I'm like, wow, this is not how we even deal with each other in the hood. We don't do that. We wouldn't put things out publicly. We wouldn't do that to each other because it's dangerous. And so for me, a lot of these, kind of these steps really do come from like what I learned growing up in poverty and how we take care of each other and how we show up for each other and
How do we protect
each other? Because we are all we got. So I feel like that concept, of protecting each other, showing up for each other, really does matter in these moments. And I think that we're at this, we're at this intersection right now in our movement where like too much stuff is online, and then the right picks it up, and then they get to exploit it, and then they get to do whatever they want with it. And we're sitting here like, why can't we win? And I'm sitting here like, because you didn't put it online, and now the whole world knows, and they're using it against us. Like, and now we're all managing the crisis of that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I remember talking to, elders in the Black Power movement, and them saying, part of the last years, the last sort of vital years of the Black Power movement was them spending all this money on defense, on defending themselves in the courts, defending themselves against these, whack charges, people going to prison. And we're in a very similar moment where it's not a bunch of people getting arrested in the same ways, but the mob is social media. And the mob is being weaponized by the right. And now we are all having to shuffle to figure out how to defend ourselves. And when you start to get in that posture, that's a survival posture.
Yes.
So it's very hard to see anybody else but yourself. And that to me is the part where I feel like I'm in the study phase right now. I don't have a lot of answers because I'm literally in the trenches of it. But there's something here that I think we need to keep digging at. And usually how this works is in 10, 20 years, everybody's gonna look back and be like, damn.
Gonna write some academic papers.
Exactly. Remember that time, and then this happened, and I'm trying to be like, we really can, we can save this if we try. But we'll see.
I have so many places I want to go right now. Can I ask you the hard, controversial question?
Absolutely.
Can we talk about what's going on right now and how you would like to be able to engage it if you were in a generative space and not forced to be in survival mode?
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with sharing that. And I'm gonna try to truncate it, but 8 years ago, 3 Black women started a thing called Black Lives Matter.
Yes. Changed my life.
And mine. And I think we were really naive in a good way, right? Because if you know what's on the other side of that, you probably don't start the thing.
Like that time I ran for mayor. Would have never done it.
Which was, all the way in Los Angeles, California. I was like, go Nikkita, if I lived in Seattle, I'd be voting. Yes, you changed a lot of our worlds with that, so thank you. But in these last 8 years, what we've done a lot of things happen, thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and then millions of people showed up for this fight. And inside of that, what we didn't do, and it's not a judgment of us, because I have a lot of compassion for us, we didn't figure out how to protect ourselves. And what's true often, especially for Black women, is we don't protect ourselves first.
No, we don't.
We do not set up protection for ourselves, and nobody else does either. So we're the first ones to put our bodies on the line and the last ones to be protected. And I've recognized specifically in this last year, as I have been one of the primary targets, I'm not the sole target, but one of the primary targets of the right, how unprotected we all are. And what's important to note, and what I wish and what I'm longing for and what I desire and what I'm hoping will happen in this round of attacks, is that we will have more space for the generative criticism. Every movement and every leader must be criticized. It makes us better. It makes our movements better. I'm actually a big fan of generative conflict. I talk about it in the book. I think conflict is unavoidable. And I actually think if we knew how to lean into conflict from a deeply healthy place, that all of us would be better. But what's happening is not generative. From inside or outside, definitely outside.
And I'm not sure if it's conflict as much as it's attack.
Yes, exactly. It's straight up attacks, and I think that people think they're. I don't know if people think they're being generative. No, I don't want to say that. But I think people think that they are righteous in it. But righteousness doesn't get you very far. So I'm really pleading to myself and with others, like, if I'm gonna be one of the primary targets, like, can we actually lean into abolition in this moment? Can we lean into it as a practice? Can we reel ourselves in, and can we try to manage these conversations with each other? One. Two, can we recognize that there is my legal team, because now I have way too many lawyers.
We are no fun.
I'm very grateful for y'all. They said to me when I got attacked last year, they said they'd never seen that level of attack towards anyone except for a presidential candidate. And that clearly the right was polling me and trying to see, okay, what's gonna be the pressure point for this movement? And that was very hard for me to understand. I'm literally just thinking I'm still like a young, organizer from the Valley with the 81810 on my chest. I'm like, why do you care about me?
Like, come see me.
Yeah, I'm just like.
But don't. Don't.
And why me? Why are you doing that? And I remember Angela Davis sitting me down and saying, it's actually not about you.
It's not.
It's actually about pressuring you as part of a larger movement. And the moment you can sort of get out of taking it personally, you can fight it differently. And it's true. I mean, it took a long time. It was very scary for me last year. It's still very scary. But this year, I'm coming at it very differently. And I'm like, okay, I see. This is the thing. It's an election year. Great. They're going to keep attacking me. This is like their playbook. Okay, what can I do not only to protect myself, but also what can I do to create a pathway to protect, inevitably, the next Black women who are going to be targeted. I won't be the last. And I'm not the first. So that is where I'm at now. I don't even know if I'm answering your question anymore. I think I am. I'm in this place where I have my organizer hat on, and I'm like, okay, what is the blueprint? Because there is none right now for me. I'm literally just making it up, and have amazing people around, but I really want to create a blueprint for protecting Black women leaders specifically.
Yeah, clap for that. Like we said, we're here to protect Black women. I think your answer was generative. I think there's a lot more questions to be asked than necessarily answers to be had right now.
Yeah.
And what it makes me think about is the ways in which when they want to break a movement, they distract us and turn us on each other.
Yep.
And because we have not quite yet all identified where white supremacist, capitalist, sexist systems still live within ourselves,
That's
which I
right.
feel like is a big part of your book,
Yep.
identifying those things in yourself. So instead of reacting, you can respond.
Yep.
I think we fall back to the default of what we've grown in.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I hear you talking about what you'll do for others, and I have two questions, but I won't ask them both at once. I want to start first with what does it look like to set a standard for accountability and transparency that's maybe not existed before and is probably unfairly placed upon us, but it is still an opportunity to do something different? Because to be honest, I want to know who's digging into United Way's 990s, who's digging into these philanthropic organizations, these foundations who only give away 5% of their budgets a year.
Yep.
But comes first for the Black-led organization that we know got money. Hello, ACLU, y'all got money. But nobody's asking for their 990s.
That's right.
And so this is still an opportunity.
Yes.
It is a painful opportunity that comes at a cost. But what is the opportunity to set a new standard for transparency and accountability that hopefully will be willing to ask across the board and not just of the Black woman-led organization that seems to always be setting the new standards?
That's exactly right. It's a really good question. I think, first of all, number one, I actually did not know what 990s were before all of this happened.
It's confusing.
So part of the opportunity here is to educate our
Yes.
folks. Like, something's being weaponized against us that many people don't even know and honestly don't care about.
I didn't know about them until they started asking us for them for COVID relief funds. I said, you need my 990. I had to call the
Yes.
accountant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the accountant handled that. Like, I don't know what that is. It is such a trip now to hear the word, the term 990s. I'm like, ugh, it's like triggering.
April 15th is next week.
But
Taxes.
What I feel like there's many opportunities here. One, to talk about Black-led institutions.
Yes.
And the history of them, especially Black radical institutions. Down in Los Angeles, the Panther Party had a nonprofit called Community Services Unlimited. Most people don't realize that many of our Black Power movements had nonprofits because that's how they were able to do the free breakfast program and things like that. And so I think it's a great opportunity to be like, the right-wing media they don't get to co-opt our work and what we've done for so long. And so this seems like an interesting moment to really talk about Black-led orgs. It also feels like a really important opportunity to talk about why our organizations get under attack first, why they are the first ones to be challenged, and there's an opposition to them. And I also think it's a great opportunity to talk about what we're trying to build. Like, for a long time, I'm not at Black Lives Matter anymore. I left last year, but for a long time, we weren't a nonprofit on purpose. We took 7 years to become an actual 501c3. And these 2 short years, not even 2 years yet, that we've been an actual 501c3, it's been so under attack.
And I think that's why so many folks avoid the nonprofit industrial complex.
That's exactly right.
When we think about our movements for Black liberation, in order to serve community, quote unquote, legally,
Yes.
too often do we get pushed or forced into a system that is actually meant to attack us
Yes.
and limit the capacity and the reach of our work.
Exactly
And
right.
so I think we have to start questioning those institutions.
That's exactly right. Yes, there has been so much clarity for me, a questioning for me. I don't know if I have clarity or answers yet, but I'm like, wow, this doesn't seem safe for us. This 990 structure, this nonprofit system structure, this is like deeply unsafe. Like, this is being literally weaponized against us, against the people we work with. I can't tell you how many people are like, am I next? Like, are they gonna do this to me? So there's not a lot of, that's like, when you know this, you run an organization, like, people's morale in an organization is so important.
Yes.
But if their organization and the people in it are being attacked and scrutinized at everything they do, that leads to deep burnout. That leads to deep resistance and trauma. And so I think that other piece for me around, what I think is important for people to understand is, and it's connected to this question, but there is a misinformation and disinformation effort to not just challenge Black Lives Matter and the organization, but it's an experiment. If they win, then it's the next Black-led organization.
Yes, it is.
And then it's the next Black-led organization, and it's the next Black person who's leading that. And so it's so important that we pay attention to what's happening, and we don't allow for they have this they know what they're doing, like how to create the infighting, how to create the distrust. We have to stop it. We have to stop it before they do it. We have to shut it down. We have to be showing up against it. And so that has been really important to me too, like taking the time to kind of stand back and watch it happening and being like, oh, this is how this works. Like we are literally the experiment right now.
Which doesn't mean we don't critique.
Nope.
There is a healthy way to ask questions and push that doesn't require us to harm each other.
That's right.
And doesn't allow white supremacist institutions to dismantle the work we are doing.
That's right.
And so I want to pivot from there. I asked how do we get to create a new standard? And for me, that's about imagination and creativity and thinking beyond these structures we often get forced to function in.
Yes.
And when I think about abolition, being an artist and a cultural worker is foundational to that work for me.
Yes.
Because if we cannot imagine it, we probably won't be able to build it.
That's right.
And
yes. Another shirt. Who's making it?
please donate the proceeds to creative justice.
Yes.
But really thinking about, for me, I arrived at abolition because of creativity.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a lawyer. Yes, I've seen all the problems in the criminal legal system and the problems with policing and the way that prisons cause harm. But what got me to become an abolitionist was that I could start to imagine something that actually saw my whole person and my whole identity and my well-being and honored my human dignity and imagined a planet that young people can live on 7 generations from now that isn't riddled with disease.
Yes.
How has being an artist, because I don't get to hear you talk about this enough, and I hope that you're moving into a period of time where art is central to your organizing. How has being an artist allowed your vision and commitment to abolition to grow deeper and stronger, and even in these midst of these hard times, be something you remain deeply committed to?
It's honestly what saves me, being an artist. I think that my art practice is an extension of my abolitionist values, and it's the deep creativity in my practice that reminds me of why it's so beautiful to be alive, and it's so beautiful to be able to create a new world. I believe that as abolitionist artists, our work is to remind people what's possible on the other side through that imagination. And I was an artist before I was politicized. Like, art is what I know first. It's my first language. If you look at any organization that I've started or any movement I've helped develop, art is always at the center of it. It always is at the center of it. And I'm excited. I've been saying that the last 20 years of my work has been about dismantling systems, and the next 20 years of my work is all about building new systems and building new generative abolitionist institutions, and I'm excited about that work.
I'm so excited myself. I was almost speechless there, y'all. When I think about the power of art and culture, and also the power of stripping our art and culture from us, how that disempowers.
Yes.
You mentioned before the importance of grieving. And I feel like part of the circle of rebirth is also death and grief, and then rebirth. And I feel like abolition is actually about that. It is our ability as a society to actually grieve harm that has been caused.
That's right.
Repair that harm through reparations, and then be able to envision what comes next. And you did you've worked on an installation here in Vashon.
Yes, I did.
That I hope will inspire the community here to allow what does not need to continue anymore to die off.
Yes.
To grieve those parts of ourselves that may be ashamed or embarrassed and maybe also need to move on. And then allow the birth of those parts we want to keep. Can you share about how that installation can be a part of that process here?
Absolutely. So I've been doing these neons, these neon lights, and I designed one in Los Angeles at a co-working space called Second Home. The building was built by a famous Black architect, and they were about to get rid of it. And this team came in and restored it, and they asked me to, with the city of Los Angeles, put up a light installation. Well, they asked me to do a piece, and I decided I wanted to do a neon. And that neon in Los Angeles says, it's Harriet Tubman's last words, "I go to prepare a place for you." And I was like, oh, I really like this medium. And so when the folks here asked if I wanted to, really this was just gonna be a talk, and I was like, can I do more? I wanna do other things here. So thank you for the crew that has brought me here. I was like, I really would love to do like installation. And so this installation is called Abolition Is ... And as I have been developing, my understanding of abolition and trying to evolve the context of abolition, I've really been thinking about abolition not just as the getting rid of, not just getting rid of prisons and police, but also abolition as something that is deeply imaginative. It's about something that we can build. Abolition isn't just the destruction of, it's something that we can build something out of. And so I really want this island to understand and feel connected to abolition is, and put the next words behind it. And I also see it as a call to action.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is we desperately need to heal ourselves from the punishment systems that we've invested in. We need to release ourselves and grieve that system. We live in an economy of punishment. Everything that we do, I was just chatting with Nikkita in the back about the Will Smith slap. Whatever you think about it, it was a really important abolitionist moment. And because we don't live in an abolitionist world, it turned into this moment of shame and punishment. And it could have been a really deeply restorative moment for so many people involved if we leaned into an economy of care, which is the kind of economy that we need inside of this place. It's the kind of economy that we need as we vision towards abolition, an economy that is invested in the human being over profit, the economy that is invested in care, love, transformation, and healing. And so this piece is that. And I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to be able to share it with y'all.
What I want to, as we bring this conversation to a close, is actually, when I saw the sign, I thought about the invitation. That's what I thought about. Abolition is ... is an invitation.
Yes.
To decide for yourself how you're going to be a part of an economy of care.
That's right.
and to engage the conversation of abolition outside of the context that it's been so politicized that the word has almost become inflammatory for some and a badge for others. How does it become a call to action, an invitation, a mandate for care,
Yes.
and not something that is used to divide?
Yes.
I think a lot about how when the uprisings first started and the calls for defund became a mainstream conversation.
That's right.
We heard elected leaders say the word defund was too inflammatory. It divided people instead of bringing them together. And I hope that the Vashon community will see the words abolition is and actually see it as an invitation to come together, to build that world of protection and care and restoration and transformation, and to use our imaginations to see ourselves in that next world.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I actually don't fully know who comes next, but I felt really good in that moment.
That was amazing. I was like, mic drop, Nikkita. I think I'm supposed to tell people where to go next, and I don't remember the directions. I can't hear you. Great. So come on out. Let's go check out the sign, y'all. I was like, I know she said. I loved her. I was like, oh,